Hi, everybody. I am wait.
Without fail.
Warning, this show may be triggering for anybody experiencing gambling-related harm. Please watch cautiously. We speak from our experiences only. Please seek professional help for a gambling addiction.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Bet Free Life. I am Christina, and I am coming to you 2 years into recovery. I last placed a bet March 6th of 2021.
Oh, man. And I'm Brian. And I last placed a bet in July of 2014. Christina, congratulations on 2 years.
Thank you.
I feel like we just did your 1 year.
I know. The second year went really quickly for me for some reason. And the first year was really hard. The first year of recovery is really hard, but man, that second one kind of kicked my ass a little, but I'm still bet free and I'm still doing the podcast and still doing this with you. And I'm very, very grateful.
And we don't do enough of these episodes. So people need to realize that if they want more, they can just listen to our podcast. What's the name of your podcast?
I am the host of the Broke Girl Society podcast. You can find it anywhere podcasts are.
That makes sense. And I host All in the Addicted Gamblers podcast, and ditto. You can find it anywhere. Just Google Gambling Addiction Podcast, and you'll find them both.
So my podcast is centered around females who have struggled with gambling, and it's kind of more the direction that I go and kind of recovery and how that impacts us as women.
It's been a handful of years since I've seen this individual. She first came on the podcast and helped us. We did some meetings. It was really cool. She was great. And then we just sort of lost touch. And then, bam, I got on Facebook and there she was. And so here she is tonight. Christy is joining us. Christy, all the way from Missouri, is joining us. Christy, how are you? Thanks for doing this.
I'm good, Brian. How about you?
I'm great. We're up here talking about recovery, and it's a good night. So, Christy, would you just start off by telling everybody about, not that it matters, but it's nice to get an idea of where people are in their recovery. How long has it been for you?
Okay, so I last placed a bet February 20th of 2018. So I just got my 5 years a couple weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Fantastic.
That is awesome. What kind of gambling did you do when you were gambling?
Slot machines, strictly slot machines, nothing else.
My kind of person.
That was my gambling too.
Nothing else was fast enough for me. Like I'm not a patient gambler, so I couldn't do the cards or the table games or lottery tickets. I like to, get that fast.
That's why I switched to slot machines. Because I was playing table games, and then I was like, this is taking too long. I need my fix.
Mm-hmm. One thing I want to mention, though, you are, without saying which state you are, because I don't believe you did, but you gambled. Oh, did you? Okay.
Yeah.
We don't know how you feel about that, but you gambled in Oklahoma, which is the state that I live in and where my gambling happened.
Yeah, we don't have casinos very close where I live. It's about 3 hours. But where I worked at for a long time was just about 45 minutes away. So from the Oklahoma border. So I started gambling in Oklahoma. I never really gambled in Missouri much.
In Oklahoma, man, they're really hitting those borders hard. Pretty much along most of our borders, there are big fancy casinos, especially like if you go into Texas, Missouri and Arkansas. Those are kind of where some of the bigger ones are. But I think one of the largest like casino floors actually belongs to Oklahoma, and it's on the Texas-Oklahoma state line. And it's got like one of the largest gambling floors. Like Oklahoma is really, they're trying to win that award. Pretty frustrating.
Christy, would you talk a little bit about your gambling and how it started?
Just so you know, I got it written down so I don't forget, because it was a long time. And my story kind of gets all over the place if I'm not real careful. I grew up in a home where my mom gambled. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, and they were very religious and they didn't gamble and kind of taught me that gambling was wrong. So for a long time, I was kind of in the gambling is wrong bandwagon and didn't do it. When I was 16, my mom, she taught me into going to bingo with her. At 16, you can go to bingo here. And I didn't even realize it was gambling at the time. I was just like, this is kind of boring. I kind of laughed at all the old ladies with their bags of, bingo markers and their Lucky Charms and all that stuff. But, I just thought it was kind of funny, and it was really slow, and it wasn't something that really interested me. It was interesting, but it wasn't something I really got into.
Did the people have like little troll dolls and stuff sitting out on their bingo cards?
Absolutely. The troll dolls, they rubbing stuff, just crazy stuff. And we used to like to pretend because you rip the page when you bingo, you like pull the paper off, with all the numbers on it. And so my sister and I and my mom would just like pretend to rip the page, just to get all the old people angry. But I mean, that was the most fun we had, not the bingo game itself. And then summer, I remember I was about 20 and I was in college just finishing up, and I was taking the summer class, and it was called Being Human and Addicted. And in this class, we were all split up into little groups, and my group got gambling addiction. So we were to look up gambling addiction and learn about the resources and how to get help and just all that kind of thing. And I don't think I ever realized at that point that gambling could even be an addiction. I knew about alcohol and drugs, but I didn't really know about gambling. And we had to do a report in front of the rest of the class. And my part of the report basically just ended the report saying, well, you better not get a gambling addiction, because there is no help. Because I tried, numerous times to get the packet sent to me, like you said you did. It actually was for a school, and they never would send them to me. It was pretty eye-opening at that moment. And then just fast forward, I was about 21, and my mom would be like, hey, she was struggling, going through a divorce, and I'm a social worker, at heart and in trade. So I'm like, okay, I'll go with you, Mom. I'll give you, something she enjoyed. She'd give me money. I just put it in the pocket. I didn't get it. I'm like, this is crazy. There's shoes at the mall. There's all these things. I don't want to spend money on that. So I would keep the money that she'd give me and, do other stuff with it later. But, I can tell you, I remember that very night, that everything changed, and I was sitting in a slot machine, just 50 cents, nothing major, but I won a few $100, and all of a sudden it's like a switch flipped. I can just remember that to this day, 15, 16 years later. Oh, this is why they do it. And, I was probably hooked at that moment, but we lived so far away that I didn't go often yet. It took about another year and a half before I kind of discovered the Oklahoma casinos, and that things started to go downhill pretty quickly from there. So like I said, I graduated in 2002 with my bachelor's degree and got my first job. And it was in the field, seeing clients around, in the community. So when I discovered the Oklahoma casinos, my mom took me, and it wasn't very long where I was going by myself. My job had no idea where I was. I mean, I wasn't supposed to be in the office. I was supposed to be out seeing people, and that's what they thought I was doing. And I probably wasn't most of the time. I mean, I was at the casino probably 3-4 days a week. Every dime I had was going into those slot machines, and that happened so fast. I started gambling in 2003 probably at those casinos, and by 2004 or 2005, I'm already starting the self-exclusion process.
That fast.
So, yeah, it was quick, and it should have been quicker. I mean, I recognized it before then, but probably the first or second time I went to the Oklahoma casino, I could feel it. I don't know about you guys, but in my body, you just feel that, those endorphins or whatever it is. And I would feel kind of anxious. And I mean, you'd see my car in the parking lot be all jacked up because I was in such a hurry to get in the building. And, just the way it was just, I could already tell there was something in me that, this wasn't a good thing. I started the self-exclusion because I knew I could already see it becoming a problem. And I banned from the first casino, and I went home and I was like, yes, my problem's over. This is done. I don't have to worry about this anymore. Good. Well, the next day I'm reading the paperwork and I'm like, oh, this just is this casino and this tribe. Oh, wait, there's 8 more tribes. And they all have their own casinos. So guess what? I can go there. I can just not go here. So I'd go to that one. For a while I was allowed to go in, and then I get fed up and be like, oh, I got to stop. So go in, self-ban. Then another tribe. And the same thing just kept happening. And then the other thing with Oklahoma, at least at that time, was some of those casinos, all the casinos are different. All the tribes have different exclusions. And some of them would only be a year. So, but by the time I was excluded, self-excluded from one, I'd be unexcluded from the other one. I could go back, and it just kind of was a big old, I don't know, just a mess, because I could just go from one to the other. And then eventually it got to where I was banned from all of them, but that didn't stop me either. I just, like, if there was a big casino and then they had like a small sister casino, I just go to that one. And then my plan was, if they caught me, I'd say, well, I didn't know you guys were related. I'm sorry. Although I knew. And I got away with that. I mean, I got caught like 3 times. I didn't get jackpots getting caught at different casinos, but they just had me leave, and I left, and that was the end of that.
Wait, so you won jackpots and then you got caught?
3 different times in 3 different places.
And then so you couldn't take the money?
Oh no, they kept the money and made me leave.
Oh, what a
Yeah, that's what they
Stab in
do
the
here in
heart.
Oklahoma. There's generally no like trespassing or criminal charges. I mean, they can, but they generally don't. They just keep whatever money, like you could win the jackpot of your life. And if you banned yourself, like, to me, that would be like the worst feeling in the world. But that's what they do, that's kind of how they enforce it, I guess. And some of them don't even do that.
Well, I mean, I had one I probably won like 40 jackpots at before they realized, oh, wait, you're on this list.
Yeah.
So that one was the one I got caught at, that one. And they brought me in the back room, and they were making these phone calls. And what's really scary is I was 7 months pregnant, and I'm back there, and I'm thinking I'm going to jail.
Okay.
And it was terrifying. And I swore, I'm like, I'm never coming back here again. I promise I'm never coming back here again. And I didn't ever go back to that one again. But it's just so sad and awful to think that, I'm in there pregnant, and, gambling was more important than anything else to me at that time. Something about those Oklahoma machines, like, I've gambled in Missouri and I wasn't interested in it, but they have these stupid ones that have these little bonus red spins. And I swear to goodness, I don't know what it is about it, but it was the most addictive thing. Like, I would dump every dime I had just to get that like free red spin, like, because I knew it was going to be big. And it's just crazy, but I would do that all the time.
A
So
lot of people don't know about that. Like Oklahoma and the tribal casinos, that was the most addictive part to me, as well as those red spins. I mean, you got those red spins, and that's a lot of times where it drops the money, like serious money.
mm-hmm.
And a lot of them don't have that option.
What is it?
It's like this red spin. So like the machine, it's just like a bonus. Like you would get a bonus, but it goes red, and then it just continues to go red, and there's no, like, you don't know what you're going to get. But those are where like the big money was, like in these, it was just like this extra bonus rounds where they would spin, and depending on what game you're playing, right? If you're playing a 3-wheeler, it would just continuously spin the 3-wheeler, or if you played a 5-wheeler, it's hard to explain, but it's not typical in most casinos.
No, because Oklahoma is all based on bingo patterns. Like,
Yes.
that's the way they get away with gambling, is they call it electronic bingo. So
Yep.
like up on the slot machine screen, you'll see like a bingo card. And so I don't think you win unless you have the patterns.
I got obsessed with that. I would clock that pattern. I thought I could tell you if this game was going to play and if this game wasn't going to play, because the pattern should have made it play. And when the patterns come up and the machine's not playing, that was the most infuriating feeling known to man. Like, I'm still feeling that right now, like, fuckers. But it's just like, that's how it was like, you would get to the point where you would just get obsessed with that bingo card.
It's crazy, because I didn't even like bingo. I didn't even get it.
I guess only Oklahoma gamblers understand this concept.
Yeah, I don't think they're anywhere else. I don't think that's it. It's a tribal thing. It's, I guess, how they get by with gambling there.
Yep. That's how they made it legal.
So, like, I'm a social worker. So, like, I understand addiction. I saw it. I knew it. My family, they were like, what is going on with her? Why can't she pay her bills? Now she's out of college. She's making money. She should be becoming successful and moving up. And all I'm doing is begging grandma and grandpa for money, asking dad for money, doing all that kind of stuff, and falling behind on my bills. It was just awful. I'd win, tons of money, but I couldn't stop. I just put it back in. And I don't know about you guys, but I tried everything to stop my spending. I cut up my debit card, cut up my credit card, Well, I just drive to the bank or write a bad check. I had a lockbox for a while where I would put money in the lockbox and then literally go and flush the key down the toilet so I couldn't get into it. And then the other key was at home. That worked a couple times, but then you figure out, hey, you can beat it with a rock and it'll open. So there you go. So that didn't work either. I've tried
like a handheld lockbox.
Yeah.
I just learned about these literally last week. Someone showed me someone showed me one. And I was like, oh, that's genius. You put your money in, you can't get it. That makes sense. But you figured out a way.
Well, gamblers will find a way.
We'll find a way.
Yeah.
They say that gamblers have no willpower, right? Like we have no willpower. That's our problem is we can't walk away. No, we have tremendous willpower, especially when it comes to gambling. We'll break a lockbox open with a rock, or we'll drive back home 5 times to get cash and go back, or we'll leave our cards at the house thinking, well, if we don't have them, we can't get them. But then we figure out we can move money through cash apps. And like, it's, yeah, the links that a gambler will go to gamble shows we have tremendous willpower. Just
absolutely.
Going the wrong way with it.
Absolutely. So yeah, like once I ran out of the casinos I couldn't go to in like an hour and a half away, I said, well, that's good. We're safe. I won't go anymore. Guess what? Tulsa's 3 hours away. So that's what I started doing. I thought I'll never do that. Well, I crossed that line pretty quickly and started driving 3 hours to gamble, and I was doing that for quite some time. And then and this is still in 2006. So I found a counselor. We have one in my area, or did, 15 years ago. And I called and I called and I called, and they never called me back. And every time it would get bad, I'd call him. Finally, once he called me back, and you know what? He asked me questions about my gambling. I'm like, I just answered them in a way where he would be like, oh, okay, you don't have a problem, so you're good. And I'm like, I can't believe I just did that. But I rationalized and just made excuses and acted like I was good. So, that the one opportunity I had for counseling, and I didn't get it. About that time, I also started graduate school. And I thought, okay, school, more money, less time to gamble. That'll solve my problem. So here we go again. I'm gambling. I'm going to school when I want enough money to buy a car or two. And guess what? Who needs school? I can just gamble for money. That's
Amen, really sister.
My mind was. What?
I said, amen, sister. That's what I figured too. I was like, who needs school? I could just gamble.
I know. And so, so that's what I did. I quit graduate school back then. And that was in 2006 because I thought, well, I don't need this. I couldn't focus on school at the time anyway because of my gambling was so out of control. And then I think it was 2007, I started looking for GA meetings. I thought, okay, maybe I should do that. Heck, I work in mental health. I know that these things work. So I'll do that. So I called around and got a hold of a church that was near us. And I talked to some lady that did the meeting. She said, oh, it's just these 2 guys and they're in this basement of this church. And it's kind of weird. And that's what she said. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm 25. I'm not going to go sit in the basement with 2 weird guys. So didn't do that either. So I continued gambling. I made no money, was spending all my money, and then started getting served every few months at my job. I don't know about you guys, but I've had my wages garnished for bills, and the sheriff has to serve you with the paperwork. So they have to come to your place of employment, serve your, I guess, HR or whoever person with this paperwork. So they garnish your wages, and they have to do it every 6 months, even if it's the same bill, every 6 months they have to redo it. So every 6 months I have a creditor come and give them, serve papers to my HR person. And sometimes another creditor would sneak in and come too. So we'd have several people come and trying to get my wages. It is super embarrassing to have cops looking for you at work. But did that stop me? Nope. Kept on going. It just, I'm working with children and families, telling people to take care of their kids and go to treatment and all this kind of stuff. And I'm doing my own thing in my own time and, not practicing what I preached by any sense of the imagination, and then in 2007, I also got married. Thought, okay, this will solve my problem, right? He'll just help me keep busy. We won't gamble and that kind of thing. Well, I just brought him.
Been there. Had this same thought.
Yeah, that didn't work. Instead, I taught him to gamble. So we went on the weekends after I spent the whole week sneaking off. So it was great. And at one point I remember driving home and I'm like, okay, you have to stop me. Just next time I say, let's go, just tell me no. And he goes, I'm not going to do that. Just don't do it. Thanks. That's helpful. I'll not do it. That obviously didn't work. And then in 2010, I found out I'm pregnant and I thought, okay, hey, this will fix the problem. Absolutely not. I gambled all the way up till 2 days before my son was born. And granted, I'm an hour and a half, 2 hours away from my house. If I were to go into labor, I don't know what would happen. But did that cross my mind? Nope. It was that the compulsion or that pull was so strong. I went anyway, even though, I knew better. I knew the risk I was taking. Very scary. And honestly, when I wrote this was the first time I'd ever even thought about that. Like it never even occurred to me until I wrote this just a month ago, that that's what I was doing. Like it just hit me at the pit of my stomach, just made me sick to think about that it had that much control and, what I was doing. Well, in about 2013, I filed bankruptcy. Again, here's my solution. I'll do that. I'll file bankruptcy. So I did. And what happened to me was I wasn't done gambling. And I think I learned pretty quickly why GA doesn't encourage you to a bankruptcy or a bailout. I wasn't in GA at the time, but what happens after you file bankruptcy is they start sending you credit card offers. So I got all these credit cards and I got out of debt. So I didn't have, my wages garnished anymore. So I was making all my wages, and now I have credit cards, which I could buy everything. And so I have all my money can be gambling money. So then I just gambled with everything I had and put everything like I needed on credit cards. And this went on for a couple of years where my husband had no idea that everything is going onto the credit cards and nothing is, I'm not paying cash for anything except the casino. I think the last straw, like my final gambling was I want to say it was Thanksgiving weekend, 2017. My son, I always had this one line I would not cross. I would not gamble when he was home. I would not gamble when he wasn't at school or at daycare because I wasn't going to, I told myself I'm not missing out on time with him. That was like the line I drew for myself. And that weekend I crossed it for like the first time. I was not able to go to Oklahoma casinos anymore. So there's a Kansas casino, right? And that was about an hour and a half away too. So I went there because that weekend was the only weekend they would give you the free play. Like you could earn your free play anytime, but like that was the only weekend they would give it to you and let you use it. So I'm like, I can't miss out on this free money, right? So I have to go. So I lied to my husband and went to the casino and went to the ATM like, I don't know, 10 times or how many ever, just as many as I could until it was all gone. And I drove home that night and it just like something clicked and I'm like, this has got to stop. I'm either going to run my car off a bridge and die or I'm going to stop, because that was pretty much where I was at that point. It was one or the other, and I chose that I was going to live. I wanted to be around for my son. So I found a GA meeting and it was terrifying to go, but I tell you what, like I walked in that room and it was just one little like 70-year-old man. That was it. Just me and this little old man. And, he was just so nice and you could just, I don't know, you can almost feel it in him, like the peace that he had. He was talking about his life and normal things that were happening and he was enjoying them. And I haven't felt peace or enjoyment in anything in so long that like I wanted what he had, and I decided right then and there I'm going all in. I'm just going to do everything I can to give everything to this because I want what he has. And I'm broken. I am, there's not much left, so I started going to GA twice a week. We only have 2 GA meetings here where I live, and unfortunately they're really small. The people I'm in my 40s now and I am like the youngest person by probably a lot. They have been just an absolute like blessing for me. I've worked the steps and as I've done that, I've become like the person I know I'm supposed to be. When I gambled from so young, I was 21, 22, getting out of college, just where most people are like figuring out who they are and developing themselves. I wasn't involved in any of that. I was just gambling the whole time. So here I am in my late 30s going, okay, who am I? where do I fit? What do I do? How do I make the best of this, life now that I'm not doing this anymore? And, the GA meetings have really helped me do that, help me work through those things. And, it's such a blessing to be the go in there and talk like I am to you and tell you guys and tell them, the awful things I've done that I've never spoken to anyone. I mean, there's no one on this earth, well, until everybody now that knows these things, and it feels so good to be able to say those things. Nobody's running out of the room screaming like, you're crazy. That's terrible. They're all going like this, like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. And there's just something so, I don't know. It's just so therapeutic about having those people sitting around that table, looking at you and going, yep, done that, done that, done that. And not, you're insane or this is crazy. And it just, I don't know. I just have to go because I just feel like I walk in out of my meetings every week and I'm just so grateful that I went. I mean, I don't always want to go because life gets busy, but I tell you what, I've never left a meeting and said to myself, geez, I wish I didn't do that. Some meetings are better than others, but I credit GA for a lot because they've just really, it's been very, very helpful to me, so the first 90 days was really tough, but after that first 90 days, I fell off the wagon once, got back up and knock on wood, haven't fallen off since. So, I know I'm one day away from another bet. And so I just have to keep that in mind. And it's the other reason I think GA meetings are so great because they keep you, every time a new person comes in and you hear another story, it just brings you right back to that moment where you were right there where they are. And I do not want to go back there again. And so it keeps me on the right path. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I went back to graduate school since entering GA, and I will graduate in May with my master's in social work. So I'm super excited about that. And
Right.
Fantastic.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm very, very grateful. I swear I owe it to GA because I know I couldn't have done it. I mean, if I was still gambling, absolutely not. But it's like I said, it's helped me become who I'm supposed to be. And without it, I know I wouldn't be where I am. I don't have any debt other than, monthly bills, and I'm about to finish school. I couldn't have done it without, the support of the weekly meetings and, the podcast and all those resources that I reach out to. Brian, I've listened to your stuff probably, I have no idea, a lot, over and over and over and over and over, because sometimes I just have to hear it again and again. But it's, all that has just been so helpful to me. And I'm just looking forward to what I can do in the future. I'm hoping that, once school gets out, I can figure out where I might fit in this recovery community, because I love to hear the work that you guys are doing and all the different people that you bring on the podcast and all the work that they're doing. I really hope that I can, be a part of that in some way, maybe where I am, because there's so little help.
Especially for women, to hear women's voices sharing their stories. I'm always grateful for any woman that wants to step up and share her story, because there's still so much shame and stigma associated with gambling, especially for women. I mean, I think in general, yeah, but you hear more and more men's stories and not as many women's stories, or especially not as many women's stories our age. Let's get real about this. Like, there are women's stories sometimes that are maybe have 20, 30 years on us, and not that we can't hear ourselves in their stories, because it doesn't matter who's telling a story about gambling addiction. I can hear myself in whatever part of their journey that I'm connecting with, because I think we all have the same connection when it comes to how gambling took over our lives. But to hear women that are our age or even younger sharing their stories, because I started gambling at 28, I spent my whole 30s gambling, and this is, when you're in your 30s, that's the time of your life where you're really trying to figure out your path in life. You're really trying to figure out who you are. And I was extremely stagnant in my gambling, so when you talk about that, like, I didn't have any other hobbies. I didn't get involved in anything because I just gambled all my free time. That was very much for me too. And it's like, so once gambling was away from, like, I stepped out of the gambling cycle, it was like, what do I do now? Like, I lost my friends, my family's leery of me, like, I don't even know who I am anymore. Like, so it's really great to hear, somebody that gambled during those important years, to say, hey, I'm accomplishing this and I'm doing this. And that brings a lot of hope.
I really hope that's what I can do through this, is just at least one person, connect or hear something that resonates with them.
Well, I also filed bankruptcy. So when you said that, I was like, oh, I did that. And I also, my first GA meeting was a church basement, and it wasn't 2 people, it was 3 people. And I went once, and then I never went back for another year and a half to a different meeting. But
mine was at a church, but not a basement. And it was 2 older gentlemen, but they were super kind, super grateful.
But I love that you are talking positively about GA, because I love a good GA story that's positive and is filled with making a difference in your life, because I think people need to hear that. Because a lot of younger people tend to not seem to want to go to GA, and I understand to some degree, but it's good to hear that people have a good experience there.
Yeah, I think a lot of people just walk in, at least from what I've seen here, they think, okay, we're going to wave our magic wand and you will be healed. And that's just not, it's a lot of work. And I think some people just come in, I don't know about you guys, but I'm a very instant gratification type of person. So, I really just want that fix. I want to just walk in and be fixed. And, a lot of people find with GA that it doesn't just, it's not like that. So I think some people get discouraged and they don't come back, because they don't see that fix as quick as they'd like to, I guess. I don't know.
I think there's a lot of disconnection too, with GA and kind of the younger generation. Like I know here locally, the younger people that come in and they're just like, what is this about? But I was happy to hear that like GA has expanded into the online community. There's GA Zoom meetings. You can probably find one at any hour of the day. I don't know if we have I know you can go to GA or gamblersanonymous.org, and then they have some on their sites, but I know randomly people have thrown out GA meetings, in local chapters that are online as well. And that is a really good option.
Yeah, I have another guy in meetings with, he attends a couple meetings in Las Vegas online, GA meetings. And he says those are some of the best meetings he's ever been to. He just really is into that meeting.
Are there many women? You said there was just an older gentleman. Have you seen many women coming into the program?
Yes, I have. I mean, so the leader of my Thursday night group, at least until June, I'm going to take over. But the leader of my Thursday night group is a woman, and it's her and I, and usually one other woman on occasion. But the rest of them are men on Thursday night, and then Monday night, my Monday night group, it's led by a man, and I am the only woman that comes. It's like me and usually 4 or 5 other, maybe 6 other guys. But it's a great group. But I don't know. I have to come into it with the mindset, I'm here to get what I can out of this, and I'm not gonna, what they say in GA, you don't let the personalities, you're here.
Principles over personalities.
Principles over personalities. Yeah. And and that's what I try to stay focused on, because there is a lot of difference between myself and a bunch of men 20, 30 years my senior. But
yeah, to come in and talk about women issues, right? Because a lot of times that's a lot of the core root or core of issues for women in gambling is the whole, you're the main caregiver and you're depleting yourself to take care of everybody around you, your family and things like that. And I think it's, without putting everybody in this category, but for men, they're not connecting it in the same way, as far as they have a lot of responsibilities themselves. There's a lot of pressure to be breadwinners and provide and do all these things. So they have these kind of stresses. So sometimes it can be the same stresses, but sometimes for women, there's this whole other issue, and going into a GA meeting or any meeting, regardless, and you're sitting in a room full of men and you're like, I'm really PMSing this week and I'm really struggling with my emotions. And it's of course, the guy is going to be like crickets in there, but another woman is going to understand yeah, because something that we could have handled okay the week before, our emotions were kind of leveled out. But then you go into that week, maybe before the cycle, and it's something, it just hits you completely differently. You can have a meltdown over your husband drank the last of the milk and now you don't have milk for dinner. And that is like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like that is like a breakdown worthy moment, and it can depend on where you're at. And so to try and talk about that and to try and talk about it in a sense of like, this is what we need to recognize for our own recoveries is where we're at in our cycles. And so we can be more prepared and we can handle those things. And, those aren't necessarily easy conversations when you're looking at like a 70-year-old man who's like, that comes from a generation where you don't talk about those things.
Yeah.
You mentioned some frustrations when we first started that you wanted to talk about.
Oh, well, sure. So like I said, I live in Missouri, and we have these, they call them gray machines because it's kind of like a gray area in the law, whether or not they're legal or they're not legal. So there's these slot machines and they are everywhere. So like, for instance, tonight, just to give you an example, I looked at my odometer and I drove less than half a mile down the road to my office so I could be here tonight. And I counted 5. Now, these are just places that I know of on the road. 5 either like smoke shops, internet cafes, or gas stations that have slot machines in them. Now, those are just the ones I know of. I try to avoid those places. But once in a while, you stop to get gas in the company car, and there's no other chains right here. So that's where you go. And so I've learned, and you could see them in the smoke shops as you drive down the road. So other than that, 5 and half a mile.
Do you usually see people on the machines?
Sometimes. I have tried to like avoid going, but sometimes, I will like, just if I do go into one of those gas stations, I just kind of watch because it's, I try to be real careful, but I will watch sometimes. And there are people on the machines. And where I work right now is on this, the lower socioeconomic status type of side of town. So a lot of like homeless people, you see homeless people, they'll be out and panhandling, and then they'll be inside the gas stations using their money for the slot machines. A lot of that, a lot of people with the backpacks on, and you can tell they haven't showered in a while, and they are definitely homeless, and they're in these internet cafes or in the smoke shops or in the gas stations gambling. And it's really scary to see the influx of gambling here. It's everywhere. And in my groups, like all the new people, every single one of them that we've had come in or out are hooked on these machines. And not one of them went to the casino. Not one of them gambled at casinos, racetracks, anything. It was just these machines. And until the machines, like in these gas stations, they didn't gamble before those machines. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that here. And it's really scary because they're not doing anything about it, but they get away with it. There's basically, they call them no chance machines. So what you do, I guess, is you can push a button on the machine before you play, and it'll tell you if you're going to win or not. So that is like, yep. So that's how they get away with it.
But people play anyways?
Well, sure, because then you get to the next game, and then you have to play that game to see if the next game wins. You know what I mean? So I guess
it's just like hitting a button on a slot machine. You don't know if you're going to win or not, but you got to keep hitting the button because the next spin might win.
Yeah. And I guess, there's a lot of people that like will travel around, and like we have a person I've seen in one of our groups that will come. She said that she would just go to like all around town to all the gas stations, and you just go in and you check. She'd go push through every machine and check to see if it's going to win. And if they weren't, then she'd drive off and go to the next one. And that's how she got the money to gamble, because it got so bad that she didn't have any money, but she would go to those machines and see if they were going to win and collect on, for those people that apparently don't know that that's how they work.
I have never, I've heard, like West Virginia has something called hotspots, which is like a small grouping of these machines in like a little trailer that you drive by and stop in there. And then Oregon has VLTs, video lottery terminals, and that's how they get away with it in cafes. And I remember hearing about gambling in the UK and how prevalent it was, and how it was like a betting shop on every corner, and you can't walk down the street without passing a betting shop. And I didn't think that existed here. And yet I find out with every person I talk to, it freaking exists here.
It does. And the other thing, the problem is not only these machines aren't regulated by any governing body or whatnot. So like there's no, I don't know what you call it, but there's a certain percentage they're supposed to pay out. It's not regulated at all. No money goes to the, to the government, like it, to the state, like it does at like the state sanctioned casinos. So.
And obviously you can't self-exclude from them because no one's regulating them.
No.
There's nothing to self-exclude from the gas station.
Right. And they're not putting any money into recovery or anything like that, but yet they are making a whole lot of new addicts. And I've seen kids on the machines, like little kids, young children, because you can, like I've seen parents, they'll bring their kid and their kid will be sitting there like 6 between them, just playing with them, and that's just so scary. I have a 12-year-old son and, I don't want him, the sooner you see those machines and you're exposed to gambling, the younger, I feel like that puts you at a greater risk of becoming an addict. And I mean, just a few days ago, we were walking through a gas station and my son had to go to the bathroom and he has to pass the slot machines to go to the bathroom. And he's like, look, Mom, this looks really cool. It's King Kong. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm just like, just go to the bathroom. I didn't even want, because I was just like, yeah, it's King Kong. That's right. And it'll destroy your life. Please keep going, So it's scary.
See, I don't know off the top of my head. Does Missouri have a state gambling council?
They don't. I just know because I just went through Oklahoma's conference and they were talking about the different states. As far as I know, right? Is that correct? They don't have a council?
I don't think they have a council. I know they have like a hotline that you can call and then they can tell you to go to GA and that's about it because I did and that's all they would offer. They didn't have free counseling like some of the other states. So yeah, I believe they have a council. I do know, I want to say Kansas is amazing. So I wrote a letter to Kansas when I wanted to self-exclude from that casino and said, please exclude me and sent, some stuff. And because I didn't want to go there. And I was hoping that if a letter, sometimes that's how I did it. And they would take that as enough. And they called me up and said, okay, well, we have this letter and we're going to do one of two things. We're going to put you on a public list or we're going to put you on a private list. If you fill out the paperwork voluntarily, we'll put you on a private list for this. Nobody can look it up. But if you refuse to fill out this paperwork, then we're going to put you on a list where we can see you publicly. And then they arranged to drive an hour and 40 minutes to where I live so I could fill out the paperwork. So I didn't have to go to Kansas. They came from Kansas to me so I could fill out that paperwork. And then when they came, they offered me free counseling and some other things. And, I thought that was pretty awesome that they would be willing to do that and not make me drive all the way to Kansas and go to the casino to self-exclude.
Yeah, they have some really great resources. And if you're gambling, I just want to say this, if you're gambling in Oklahoma on the state lines, if all your gambling consists of a state line casino and you're living kind of on the border edge, Oklahoma will attempt to work with you if they can to provide resources because your gambling harm is coming from Oklahoma. So I can't make any promises on that, but I would definitely, if you're gambling across state lines in Oklahoma or Kansas and you're watching this, I definitely would reach out to both the Oklahoma Association for Problem Gambling and Gaming. You can find them online. And that's the 1-800 gambler. What is it? 1-800 gambler number Oklahoma is using now. And Kansas, I believe, is the Gambling Commission Authority. I'm not sure how it's worded, but yeah, that's wonderful that they were able to work the resources. And the phone number for Missouri is 888-BETS-OFF. Hopefully maybe their resources have changed and they're offering more. If you are gambling on a border town, and you're not getting anywhere with that phone number, I would try the other states.
Well, now you've got 2 other people frustrated with you, Christy. So
good.
We didn't solve anything, but you've got our frustration behind you too.
Yeah, I don't know it's just awful. I mean, and then now they're going to put sports betting here, and then they're talking about those video lottery terminals. They're working on doing those here.
Keep piling on.
I know, it's just unreal. We're going to end up just like the UK.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're all going there, I think. Sports betting is on the docket here in Oklahoma as well. And I think probably will be available maybe in the fall, early spring of next year. So I don't know how quick it's going, but it's coming and online gambling is coming.
That's what I'm concerned about. I'm less
Yeah.
concerned about sports betting than I am about the online casino.
The more that we all share our voices and we talk about this, and it was interesting to hear you talk about gambling addiction early, like reading something on it early on and having kind of that initial awareness that gambling could be a problem, because I never saw anything like that. I had no clue gambling could be a problem. Even after like 8 years of my gambling, I still wasn't connecting it with an addiction because I didn't know.
I knew, but it didn't seem to matter at that time yet.
Yeah.
Well, Christy, thank you so much for doing this and sharing your story and most importantly, the recovery part, because I think people need to hear that it does get better. And so we really appreciate you taking the time out to do this.
Right. Well, thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Well, for Christy and Christina, I'm Brian. Talking helps.
It really does.